It's been a few months since I first got my hands on the PlayStation 5. I was one of the lucky ones who was able to pre-order and then receive the system on launch day. So what has my experience been like since I had time to get to know the PS5? Spoiler alert, things aren't all great. Welcome to the show, I'm Matt and I'm here for the tech. You've likely already heard about all the capabilities of the PS5 by now, so I'll just do a quick recap of the system and what it can do. The PS5 comes in two flavors, with or without a 4K UHD Blu-ray drive. Beyond that, they're virtually identical. At $499, I opted for the version with the disc drive as I have fondness for physical media and still have a few games in my PS4 catalog that I've yet to play. At the center of the PS5 is an 8-core AMD Zen 2 CPU running at 3.5 GHz, paired with an RDNA 2 based GPU, which reportedly can pump out 10.28 teraflops of power. The system also comes with 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 RAM for storage. Sony added an 825 gigabyte NVMe SSD with speeds up to 9 gigabytes per second. For network connectivity, a Wi-Fi 6 module and a gigabit Ethernet port. Speaking of ports, you'll find 2 gigabit per second USB-A ports on the back, as well as the same speed port on the front, but this time as a USB-C. There's also a slower USB-A on the front as well. Again, that's where you'll find an HDMI 2.1 port, the AC power connector, and previously mentioned Ethernet port. All these features combine to form a pretty capable system, which can reportedly power resolutions of up to 8K and up to 120 frames per second. Likely these two specs won't be achievable by many or possibly any games, especially at the same time, but we will see. I have to say the SSD so far has been a really nice upgrade. Traditional hard drives in consumer electronics should not be a thing in the 2020s. Now, I haven't seen the massive improvements touted by Sony yet, but to be fair, I have been mostly playing backwards compatible PS4 games. More on that later. Don't get me wrong, the performance, even in the games I have been spending time with, has been fantastic. You're gonna wanna add an external drive though, as you will run out of space quickly. Once again, manufacturers of consumer electronics, stop using old school hard drives in your products. I'm looking at you, Dell. The user interface of the PS5 is quite frankly refreshing. Sony took what worked on the PS4 UI and expanded on it, as well as slapped on a much needed coat of paint. It's slick, fast, eye-catching, and runs in gorgeous 4K HDR. At the very top of the home screen, there's two tabs, one for games and the other for media. To the far right, you'll see a search icon, the settings cog, and your profile icon, so you can log out, switch to another user, review your trophies, or adjust your online status. Below the top area, you'll see a somewhat familiar row of recently used games and apps. The store is right there at the start now. Sony wanted to make sure you didn't miss it. On the other end, you'll find an icon to get your full library of games, both installed and waiting to be installed. When you press the PS button on your controller, whether in-game or not, a dock appears along the bottom of the screen. Here you'll find icons for such things as the switcher, which allows you to switch between a few recently played games. Although note, it doesn't suspend the games to quickly jump between them like in the Xbox Series X, a feature that I really enjoy on that console and I miss on the PS5. Next, you'll find icons for notifications, audio settings, controller settings, and lastly, the icon to power off your system or put it in rest mode. Rest mode does allow for you to quickly resume the last game you were playing. So at least there's that. Activities are available from this menu as well when you press the PS button, but only for PS5 titles that support the feature. It allows you to jump quickly between sections of the game without having to go through in-game menus or traverse other areas of the game with your character just to get to the place you want to be. It will also help you track goals and sometimes has a little hint video to help you if you need it. I haven't had much of a chance to use this feature yet, but look forward to seeing what developers can do with it. The PS5's new controller, the Dualsense, is my second favorite new feature after the SSD. It's quite literally a game changer. I personally love the white and black theme of the packing controller. The controller's appearance overall is unmistakably PlayStation, but like I mentioned about the UI, there's a freshness to it. Ergonomically, the Dualsense feels great in the hand. Sony added this textured feel to the plastic, which if you look closely, is actually really tiny versions of the trademark PlayStation button symbols, a fact which you've probably heard by now ad nauseum, but hey, why can't I say it too? The control sticks, the D-pad, and the face buttons all feel familiar, and that's a good thing. The buttons might slightly be spongier than the DS4, but not really noticeable. Sony also stuck with the touchpad in the center as well as the headset jack, built-in speaker, and microphone. The microphone isn't really anything to write home about, so luckily you can turn it off with the added on-off button just above it. Sony also opted to get rid of the micro USB charge port for the much improved USB-C port. How about those game-changing features that I mentioned earlier? How about some adaptive triggers and haptic feedback? While the triggers feel essentially like the ones on the DS4, they've got something wonderful going on under the hood. Games that support these new features add another dimension that wasn't previously possible. In Astro's Playroom, for example, you can feel Astro's footsteps through the controller, and it even feels slightly different depending on the surface you're walking on. A great example of the adaptive triggers in the same game would be when you're shooting the bow and arrow. When you press L2 or R2 to draw your bow, you can feel resistance under your finger, which mimics the tension of drawing a real bow. You can imagine the possibilities of this tech if used by developers like in a first-person shooter. The trigger would jam if your gun jammed in-game. As I mentioned before, I have been focusing my time with the PS5 towards backwards compatible games. There are several that I haven't had a chance to sink my teeth in until now, for one reason or another. While certainly no Xbox Game Pass, the PlayStation Plus collection allowed me to have access to several AAA titles with my PS Plus subscription from day one. I have taken the opportunity to dig into games such as Days Gone, Uncharted 4, God of War, and Detroit Become Human. All these titles look stunning and play better than they ever have before. Days Gone, for example, plays in 4K at 60 frames a second. Running screaming from a horde of zombies has never looked better. Other titles I've been putting off until now include The Last of Us 2 and Final Fantasy VII Remastered. And quite frankly, I'm glad I waited. It was totally worth it. So why haven't I been playing any PlayStation 5 exclusives? Well, for one, I'm cheap. Paying $80 and up for a game isn't really for me. Sure, I'll do it occasionally when I'm half asleep or drunk or something, but otherwise, no way. And two, where are they? There really weren't many PS5 exclusive titles released at launch, and that is still true today as I shoot this. I'm not including PS4 enhanced titles in this, just games that you can only play on PS5. Sure, the list contains a few arguably great games, but overall the list is way too short. I played a bit of Bugsnax, which wasn't my cup of tea, and Astro's Playroom was pretty cool for showing off the features of the new controller, but that's about it. But none of these titles, or any other PS5 title, caught my eye enough to warrant me taking more than a few shots of bottom shelf tequila, so I could, while in an almost comatose state, click buy. Maybe I'm being a tad bit dramatic. Things haven't been all rainbows and unicorn farts, however. I've noticed a few issues that could just be growing pains that might be fixed in a software patch. In a couple of PS4 games I played, the frame rate would start stuttering. Nothing where it made the game unplayable, but it was certainly annoying, and I would have to reboot the system to get it to stop. Could this be a compatibility problem? If so, this could definitely be patched to fix. Or is it a sign of something more troubling, like overheating? Another issue which I've experienced is a notification that the Ethernet cable has been disconnected. This is immediately followed by a notification that the cable has been reconnected. Usually this happens once and then goes away. However, as I was writing this script, my PS5 started freaking out by popping up the two notifications again and again, and I had to actually unplug my system to get it to stop. Come to think of it, when I first hooked up my system, I noticed that it was a tiny bit awkward to plug in the Ethernet cable. I had to try several times before it clicked in. Possibly related? Early reports suggest that it just might be. I should note that both of these issues I've experienced are fairly rare for me, but happen enough to be concerning. Have you had the chance to pick up a PS5 yet? I know they're hard to find, but if so, leave a comment below what your experience has been like, or leave a comment about what you look forward to the most if you're still waiting to pick one up. Make sure to subscribe for more content. Leave me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.